it's like a building block. I think a lot of people love Lego, so they must love
Absolutely.
Chinese. So you can bring in different concepts together
Yeah.
and it create a new concept. So I give you one very simple example, like the Chinese character good, right?
Yeah.
So literally is the female character plus the character of child. Because in the Chinese culture and the philosophy, we believe when a mom is together with their children is a lovely, beautiful thing. So that becomes the
Amazing.
concept of good.
Every misunderstanding begins and stems from the fact that we think that others understands the world the way that we do. And this is the assumption that usually leads to that level of misunderstanding. But the cultural element of that is something that we need to dig deeper into. And that's the reason that I'm so thrilled to have today on our episode no other than our guest, Catherine Hua Xiang. Did I pronounce it well?
Excellent.
Thank you so much. We did a tiny bit of Chinese in our corporate world before. But Catherine, let me introduce you to her. She's an intercultural scholar. She's also the winner of the Specialist Business Book of the Year Award. And therefore today on the Future of Skills podcast, I'm thrilled to introduce Catherine. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, as you guys know already, as part of our tradition, we have on the podcast the question that we address to our guests most often, and that is, please let us know in 3 words of your choice something that you feel would describe you best.
Oh, wow. What a starting question. I like a little bit of self-reflection. We all love to talk about ourselves. But it's a challenging question as well because you really need to think hard who you are. I would say number one word coming to my mind is actually curious. I think I'm a curious person. When I was little, there's a Chinese book series called 10,000 Questions Why. It's like my favorite book. And I always knew I wanted to study abroad just to see what's the world outside. And that's part of what really brought me to the UK in the first place, to be a student. And I traveled over 50 countries now, learning 8 different languages. So I think curiosity and being curious, I think is just quite deep in me. I always would like to ask why and understand why. So I think that's important. The second one, I think, will be creative. As you know, being an author is try to create something, put knowledge onto paper to share. Being a teacher, same. I've been nominated and award LSE Innovator Award, mainly in terms of thank you. In terms of creating programs, creating courses, and creating projects for students to learn more effectively in their degree. So all that involve creativity. I have my own YouTube channel that I started.
I was just about to say, I've seen that. Well done.
It's called The Espresso. Again, it's something, I like to think about like things that we can share, we can bring, and we can create, we can produce. So I think that's another quite important element I see in myself. The final thing I would say maybe positive. I always like to enjoy every experience that I have, even if it's, challenging or difficult. I like to see there's something I can gain and benefit, so I think stay positive is definitely part of me.
That actually explains a lot, the drive, the attitude, and the energy they bring in. So thank you so much for doing this, Catherine. And when you were saying a tiny bit earlier, again, I'm trying to dip into the answers that you're giving, but you were saying that you've been traveling across so many countries, the continents, and the fact that you've got this grip on so many other languages. How many other languages? Can you please open the doors to that?
Sure, of course. I'm originally from Shanghai, so have our local dialect Shanghainese, which is completely different actually from Mandarin. So Shanghainese, Mandarin Chinese, and English being the first language, a foreign language. And then I learned German when I was in uni. And then after I arrived in the UK, I studied Greek and then Spanish, Japanese, and Italian. Italian is my last language because my partner is Italian.
How exciting. Can you please let us know, and I'm diverting here from the list of questions that I put together, but because it's so interesting, obviously you are a polymath in that sense, aren't you? You love learning languages. What helps understand the process better so that that language clicks with you?
I think, that's a very good question because people actually learn differently.
Yes,
and people learn language differently.
That's why it's a process.
For me, I think it's very important in terms of enough input. I'm a very visual, but more also audio person. So I need a lot of listening.
Yes.
So if I, watch movies or have real conversation or travel to the country, that's always very, very important for me to get a grasp of the pronunciation and just sometimes mimic and try to pick useful expressions through how people communicate. And that's always really, interesting. And I think for me, the most challenging language, actually, initially I picked Greek, partly because I thought, at that time, I was at University of Bristol. I already started teaching Chinese. So students obviously struggle with Mandarin Chinese because it's complete different script. It's complete different writing system.
Yes.
But Greek is the same. So Greek has its own alphabet. So at the time I picked it, I thought, I'm very curious how it's like for me as a student to learn a language with very different alphabet, very different script. And then I think surprisingly, it turned out to be the writing system after you get used to it, because it's only 26 anyway, it's same as in English, but it's the grammar. They have the genders, and then you have the different rules of, how to conjugate verbs. It's way more complicated compared to English. So that actually also opened doors. And then I think, language can be very different and very fascinating. So that kind of helped me to learn other language like Italian also has, different gender and different. So I think learning one language can help you form a useful habit and your own learning strategy to understand how you learn. And then next time it become a little bit easier, I would say.
How exciting. And the fact that you're giving us tiny bits more details into the nitty-gritty behind the grammar, how the genders are being put together, what is the correlation between the meaning and the pronunciation, I suppose, which is nicely leading the way into this page that I've noted down on your book. And I will just share the book, obviously, is here with me. It's Bridging the Gap, an introduction to intercultural communication with China. And I found a lot of reviews on the book saying that it has helped them a lot with their business communication with their Chinese partners, for instance. At the same time, just to understand how the language works and just to instill you guys with further more details on the Chinese language, I'll read this one out because I've literally just said this needs to be shared. Chinese, with its 35-century-old literary legacy, often stands as an enigma, its script appearing as intricate artwork and it's spoken from resembling a harmonious song. But this one is very, very interesting to know about Chinese. While the structure of spoken Chinese, especially Mandarin, seems straightforward with 21 initials, I knew that from our university times because my best friend is Chinese as well. And she said, look, it doesn't seem that complicated on the first glance, but you see, there are also 38 finals and about 400 syllables. The Chinese writing system separates from its spoken form is where the complexity lies, isn't it? And it's quite fascinating that alone. So how do you get to get a grasp of a language that seems to be so complex?
Well, I guess for me, I'm a native speaker, so you just grow up with it. But I think when I teach my students how to master language,
Exactly.
I think again, understand where they come from, what particular sounds could be challenging. So if I take British students as an example, so typically they tend to struggle with the sound like zi, ci, si, zhi, chi, shi. So for them, it sounds quite similar. So it take a bit of time to break down that. And then when it comes to Chinese characters, it's actually quite interesting. A lot of people think, it's impossible. How can I, recognize all this? But actually, it has a lot of logic underpinning how we form the characters together. So the moment, it's like a building block. I think a lot of people love Lego, so they must love Chinese. So you can bring in different concepts together and it create a new concept. And a lot of times it has very logical sense. So I give you one very simple example, like the Chinese character good. Right? So literally is the female character plus the character of child. Because in the Chinese culture and the philosophy, we believe when a mom is together with their children is a lovely, beautiful thing. So that becomes the concept of good. And then if you add a roof on top of the female character, and that become peace and protection. So it's like woman, protected by the roof. Peace, I tell you why, that's quite funny. Because as you know, in the old time, husband can have several wives, but the moment he has several wives, they all argue for his attention. So if you have one woman, one wife under the roof, you have peace.
That's very funny indeed.
Yeah, joke aside, I think we have, real historical stories and reference to the meaning of character to help our students to learn. But we also have this kind of fun, funny stories can help students to actually remember the meaning. But of course, hard work, like everything, is required to learn the language properly. But I think, it is important to find the joy and to find it, interesting in something that you do. So it'll help you and you learn faster.
How interesting. On that note, I was just about to say, of course, you've mentioned the fact that to learn such a language, it requires obviously the drive. Again, I'm going to use the word energy here, but it's the fact that it also comes with hard work, the motivation, and you kind of know the why behind it, isn't it? And I know that as part of the book, when I was reading it, I noticed that you've put in a chart whereby you're exemplifying which are some of the top, most popular languages currently being learned in the world. Of course, English comes top of the top, right?
Yes.
There's also German, the top 5, which is my favorite language at the moment. I'm learning German on the side. But other than that, it's Chinese being in that top at the moment. Do you know, like, one of the core reasons, core motives of how certain audience types are choosing Chinese for their preferred language to learn?
And, because actually what language become dominant and important in the world, obviously it's very much driven by its
Economics
economy
as well,
and politics. So English currently is lingua franca, and then before English, French for once upon a time, and then it was Latin and Greek. And Mandarin Chinese, according to the data in 2015, is listed as third of the world's most learned language. But in contrast, it's actually relatively small if you really think about it, because Chinese population contribute to like 20% of the world, but only 30 million people around the world learning Chinese. So I think that number, in my view, should grow, but it is developed quite quickly. It actually surpassed, French language, for example. I think the reason, obviously, China rised a lot economically in the last 40 years, and now it's the second, world power, so to speak. There's a lot of opportunities lying doing business with China, so that's naturally part of the reason. But I think also it's a civilization. It has a lot of philosophy, history, and interesting
Confucius,
facts.
you're quoting quite often.
So I think learning a language is also to open the world to a new place. And I think with that in mind, both, there's people learning it purely for business reasons, fair enough. There's also people learning it to appreciate something different and just to open their mind.
I absolutely love your answer. Thank you so much for sharing this. Do you see, from the perspective of you being obviously a professor at the university and teaching the British students Chinese, have you seen over the years a demand, a surge in, the know-how behind Chinese language?
Yeah, I think obviously I actually first started teaching Chinese when I was at Bristol. So that was like, oh my God, 15, 16 years ago. So before that, they didn't have any Chinese language. So that was quite interesting to see, university understands there's a need, right?
Yes.
But that was quite back then. And then I joined LSE in 2011. So again, it's been there quite a long time. But starting also from introducing Mandarin as part of degree option to now, we've now have BSc International Relations and the Chinese, BSc Language, Culture and Society. Also, students can pick Mandarin Chinese as their core degree module. So I think that demonstrates, again, the demand and the interest from students. And I think to have that combination of the subjects is also interesting. International relations and Chinese reflect, as I said, the change of the world order and the rise of China. And sociology combined with Chinese to understand more deeper in terms of social, history, society, and culture. So I think it's kind of a nice mix to show students want to understand and poke deeper into the subject, but at the same time develop their own discipline at the same time. Yeah.
And that, I think, nicely paves the way into the other question that I have similar in this ground regarding the business etiquette. In the book, you're exemplifying, you're giving some further frameworks around how the communication might work between the two parties when it comes to understanding the cultural aspect of a given form of communication, right? So you're saying there are elements of this where you're quoting some of the proverbs from ancient times of how the communication was developing over time, right? And this emphasis on the silence, and you kind of need to understand that silence and what it means. So it doesn't mean that the person is shy. It means that there is a pronounced profound element to it. Can you please open the doors to that part?
Yeah, sure. I think there's two layers to your question. So if we look at business etiquette, I think there's a lot of simple things, practical things people can learn.
Yes.
So like showing respect is very important. So when you present to yourself, you give your business card with both hands, like very straightforward thing. And then also seating arrangement, funny enough, in China is quite important. It demonstrate, the status and how the power, play in the room. So I have my British colleague who traveled with me regularly to China, and he kept joking, now I'm not going to sit down until someone tell me where to sit, so that he can show respect. So there's small things like this. It's relatively straightforward to understand. And I think there's the second dimension about what you say in the broader context of business communication, what to be aware of, what not to do, and understand more deeper why this is the case. And you mentioned the classic example of silence.
Yes.
I think that is because Chinese communication tend to be very high context based. So we believe not everything have to be said. If we're on the same page, I understand by your lovely smile and nodding, you agree with me or you're paying attention to me, right? So I don't need you to say anything to know I'm with you. You are engaged with me. And so sometimes it's more about understanding the importance of nonverbal communication on top of simply what's being said. But of course, there's also the second layer is even with what's being said, and in English, we have the same expression, read between the lines.
Yes,
so what
true.
is being said and what is actually the intended meaning. So that, again, another example quite common in business. Sometimes Chinese would like to protect the other person's face. So we would want to decline an offer or reject an invitation. We don't want to say, no, I'm not interested, because it feels like too direct. And I want to save your face, maybe say, okay, let me think about it. But a Chinese person, when they heard that kind of expression, oh, it might be a bit difficult, let me think about it, they know it's a no. It's a kind of an indirect no, but they will most likely get it. And with people from, more low context and more explicit communication style, they might say, oh, what we can do, can I offer some solution? Can I actually help? Because they can't really get that cue in the communication itself. So there's a lot of study actually around that area. And I think that remain to be an area people need to be more aware of.
I love how you are opening up the doors, and again, I'm going to use this phrase because I think it's so multi-layered in a sense that there would be so many elements to it that people need to be aware of, because it's to know almost the entire culture and how it developed over time. Just so you're aware that there are elements that, as you said yourself, they don't need to be put on the paper. They don't need to be too much surfaced. They just need to be understood and felt. So it seems like this emotional layer is very important as part of the cultural heritage that you guys bring on. And from that perspective, I have prepared here a topic regarding the partnership etiquette. So I know we've talked about the business etiquette and how meaningful that is in terms of you can easily grasp certain traditional, habits that come along. But when it comes to testing a few East meet West myths about doing business with China. Let's try and think about the true or false framework, right? Because I absolutely would love to get your grasp on that. So the first one that I thought might be really interesting to understand is, and again, this might appear random, but it's more just to test the understanding and the meaningful of the language. So, true or false, bringing a clock as a gift shows you value punctuality.
False.
False. Okay, good. True or false? Handing over your business card with one hand is fine.
Yeah, not really.
not
yeah,
really.
especially when you meet for the first time.
Do you know why? Is there a particular context that comes with that? Like, I'm handing it with one hand, but then with that, you shouldn't.
It's actually not just the business card. I think it kind of derived from the historical reference of giving any gifts.
Yep.
So in order to show your respect, when you offer something, you use both hands.
Nice.
So obviously business
it's like
card,
having a plate, right?
Exactly. You kind of want to, show with care, because I think it's more
amazing.
about care and respect with both hand and palm up. So that's why when you give business card, it's almost like you're giving, a little present of who you are, right? So you want to do that right. Yeah.
Exciting. Thank you. The next one. Yes always means agreement.
Sorry.
Yes always means agreement.
No.
Love that. Let's dig into that.
And then actually there's a very interesting article once upon a time. It's called Why Chinese Say No Means Yes and Yes Means No.
It's like the Bulgarian sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's obviously this particular context in the business context, as I kind of explained earlier, sometimes say yes, we will think about it, but actually means no.
Yeah.
But then another setting, very common, very typical, is in a guest host situation. And you always say no as a first invitation because you don't want to come across as greedy. You want to,
too eager.
Yeah, you don't want to put burden or cause trouble. That means they're going to make effort, right? They regardless they prepare a meal for you at home or they take you out to a restaurant. So there will be more trouble or more financial implication to them. So you always say no to start with. And then that's also a little test to see whether the other person is sincere. We always say it's like a little dance. If the other person insists 3 times, it's a genuine invitation and you probably should say yes.
Yeah.
And another thing, say no, is also, for example, when people give you compliment. That's another very Chinese thing. People give you compliment. The first reaction is always like, no, I'm not that good yet, or you're better, it's kind of try to give the compliment back. That's just because modesty is very important. It doesn't mean that person is actually not understanding their ability or not understanding what they've achieved or being just fake, but they believe being humble, being modest is a good thing. That's why they will always say no to any compliment as a starting point.
Do you feel that's still the type of trait that you find in today's youngsters back in Asia? Is it something common still?
It is still very common. It's still very typical, in kind of formal scenario. And I think you're absolutely right. There's some trend, particularly with Chinese students more and more study here.
Yes.
And they were trained to be more confident, which is also a nice thing. So I think depends on the compliment or the nature of the compliment itself. Young Chinese also tend to maybe just say thank you rather than no.
Exactly. And when it comes to quick negotiations, does that mean that you're showing you're decisive or the other way around?
That's a very good question because I think that really depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the context of the negotiation. Most typically, we don't like to rush it. We want to take our time, but I guess it kind of also depends on the relationship, how good you know each other and whether you've been in business for a long time. Yeah.
So doing the negotiation in a quick mode with the Chinese partners is probably not necessarily the effective type of resolution.
Especially you are at the beginning of setting up your relationship. You still need a bit of time for trust to be solidly built. To rush into something is never a good thing, right? You want to let it flow and let things find its own rhythm. Yeah.
Absolutely love that. That tells me even more about the cultural heritage that you guys bring along. I will ask a question now. We talked about the past, we talked about the cultural heritage, and the frameworks that have been constructed over since the ancient times, basically, isn't it? Your page 61 tells me about, how many layers the Chinese language comes across after so many centuries being present. Let's talk about the future and think from the perspective of the current age that we live in and the real-time translation apps, for instance, the AI-driven interpretation tools. Do you believe that technology can ever replace the cultural understanding, or does it risk flattening the spark of human exchange?
It's such a good question. And to be honest, in the field of, language education and applied linguistics, it's a question that we've been discussing and debating a lot. I think, first of all, I love the fact that technology is growing and technology enable more communication. I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I think I saw a lot of app now, people can speak in their original language, but then understand each other.
Yes.
I think in a grand scheme of things, that's a positive development, because I think anything to facilitate communication is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Now, the second layer is more about what kind of communication. So there's different ways of looking at communication. I think currently technology are really, really good with transactional communication. That means I'm seeing communication as information transfer.
Yes.
So that's why it's so helpful and useful in a tourism situation. If you want to order a cappuccino, the app can do it really, really well. So I think that layer of communication is really good, which would tend to be quite transactional. However, human beings need more than transactional communication. A lot of times we communicate to collaborate, we communicate to build that rapport, we communicate to build that trust. And can technology replace human being in terms of trust? I don't think so. So in the book that I'm currently working on, it's about insights from bicultural leaders. So I'm doing similar things as what you do. I interview different people with different profile from different industry, but they has to be bilingual, or at least bilingual or bicultural. So
to cross that bridge that you were talking even about.
Yeah, so I'm curious how, with the multilingual or multicultural background shape the way they lead. So obviously I talk to people from business, but a lot from diplomacy. So for example, I was speaking to the Danish ambassador based in Korea.
Yeah.
They all talk about, technology cannot replace human trust. Actually, with the, you remember the time during COVID, we all communicate via Zoom,
Yes,
and we have the screen. Is it helpful? Absolutely. But can it replace? But can it replace like us now, sitting down, face to face, eye to eye, have a chat? The feeling is completely different.
Yes.
So in the future, when people rely more and more on technology, actually make human interaction more valuable and more meaningful. And I think that tap into the deeper human nature being very social, and communication is beyond just transfer information.
Absolutely. Can't agree more with you on that. In fact, I would always strive when in this context of interviewing people, right, to have it in a face-to-face environment, because to be fair, when it's face-to-face, not only, in a Zoom environment, you can't necessarily see the reaction immediately, right? It might come even, a little bit delayed or whatnot, but it's not the same expression. You can't read the room as well as you can do when it's a one-to-one setting in the offline world to start with. And that's an interesting one as a link that comes through to a little bit more of a upper final question, as I would call this, but it's to do with the educational frontier. Now, you've taught and led at the LSE Language Center as well, right? The shaping how the next generation learns to communicate globally. And communication, I think, is the key word when it comes to Catherine, right? And what you're doing as a whole as part of your authorships and, your commitment with the university. Now, if you could redesign the curriculum for future global citizens, what would it include?
I think definitely, the language of AI. We need to understand that. I think also it's a skill. It's a skill we must learn, and I think a lot of people become a little bit complacent, and or sometimes we don't like change as a human being. We really don't like change. We want to hold on to what we know, but I think we are entering into a new world with probably a new revolution, in terms of how our job's gonna be, what kind of education we're gonna have in the future. So I think we do need to involve as educator ourselves. We need to understand the language of AI. We need to understand ourselves and also help our students to understand it, not only in terms of its advantages, but also its limitation, as we just discussed.
Yes.
And of course, intercultural communication and management, I think that's a very important subject. So for anyone who wants to work globally, even nowadays, to invest time to learn the language, a lot of time I feel people underestimate the meaningfulness and usefulness of learning language. They think language is grammar, vocabulary, but no, language reflects so much about the human value, what the other culture is about. So I think with that, and also specific cultural awareness training, that is also quite useful because there's a lot of theories underpinning why we communicate differently. What are the barriers to communication when you communicate with people who don't share the same, mental, let's say, image or our schema, our expectation. So there is a bit of understanding that you can develop. And I would say also student mobility is so important. At the moment, we only offer student mobility if they do, for example, language degree. So students can have a whole year abroad. But different university, they are really encouraging that. Sometimes maybe students even go away for one semester. That helps. So completely immerse yourself in a very different language and culture and society can really help you to be very adaptable. You have to be. And then you have to be very open-minded, and then you have to be also curious. And I think all these kind of skills will make us better and more prepared in a world that probably human beings need to coexist with, AI, and how we can still be in control and take control of our world.
Such a wonderful perspective. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel that you're stressing here this element of being aware that there is a new trend coming up, a new revolution, you said, as part of what's happening just basically around us and how we can make our way through it, but also leave a stamp on what's happening. And through that, do you believe that with time, the level of challenges will evolve in such a manner that, we would need to adapt furthermore when it comes to the intercultural values that we're bringing on and learning at the moment?
I think definitely, because things are always evolving. Knowledge is also evolving. And I don't have a very clear answer at the moment what intercultural communication would be in the age of AI. But I think that human element is so important, because if we still want to communicate, even with digital world and even with quite a lot of support from technology, but as long as machine cannot replace emotion, and also, in terms of nonverbal, that's also another quite fun element to explore. Can they, understand when I say yes, but actually means no, just by looking at my facial expressions? And I think because language and communication evolve psychology, emotion, and awareness, and different structure and different historical reference as well, it's something takes time for AI to learn. But
Absolutely.
I would want human being to understand, but we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that curiosity and ability to get to know why the other language work like this, why people from that culture think like that, because it's interesting. If you just rely on the machine to do that for you, it becomes very boring, because your world is just this big, right? But if you travel, if you expand, your world become bigger and it make your
Richer.
life more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And you've mentioned this element of travel and the importance of that, and understanding the why behind certain reactions and emotions is part of it, isn't it? So the context really is something that so far we don't feel necessarily that the machines are going to decode in such a way that will bring this extra layer of communication on top. We'll see what the future will hold. But for now, it's where it is. We have a tradition in terms of wrapping up the interviews, and I feel like within this topic alone, we could be discussing for ages, isn't it?
Before we do that,
Yeah.
can I just, because to the one point when you asked me the quick
Yeah.
question about whether bringing clock to
yeah.
as a punctuality, whether it's a good thing or bad
Yeah.
thing, I said no, but I feel I didn't explain that to the audience.
Please, yeah,
Probably
you
they
can-
need to know why.
Yes,
Because
yes.
traditionally, to give clock, because in Chinese we have a lot of different characters, but they tend to pronounce the same way.
Yes.
And that's why we have a lot of language play and the jokes based on that. But the Chinese pronunciation of Song Zhong, literally give a clock, it sounds exactly the same as Song Zhong means sending someone to their deathbed. So you don't want to do that. So usually we don't give clock as gift because it sounded bad and didn't mean well. So usually that's the reason. It wouldn't be suitable
How
to do
exciting
that.
to actually know that, isn't it? When we had the chance to learn Chinese a little bit, I mentioned around the corporate world, it's when part of the fashion company I used to work for as their marketer, they used to have this opportunity to teach Chinese as if you wanted to, like, this intercultural exchange. And we had offices in China as well. So there was this sort of a need in between. And I remember the Chinese tutor who came along, he was saying, you need to be very aware of the fact that the pronunciation and the
Yes.
tone is really important, isn't it?
Yes.
Because some words can mean completely different things depending on the tone of how you kind of pronounce it.
Definitely. I keep telling my students, so be careful when you say, because we have the wen to ask question and the wen to kiss. So can I ask you something or can I kiss you? Can be completely different thing.
I love that.
And then that was quite funny. And the other one's very easy, like, because in Chinese mother or a lot of other languages we have similar. So it's ma, but horse is ma. So I was like, you don't want to call your mom a horse, right? No. So silly things, but it does help them to develop this awareness, understand, the tone is actually quite important. If I do not say it right, it could mean completely different things.
Oh gosh, you're literally inciting me to learn Chinese, because it's so exciting by literally how you're sharing, and you definitely love the topic and the whole cultural element behind it. With the flash Q&As, it's something that helps us get the setting towards the end of the interview in terms of understanding how you feel and what's your prevalence towards certain things. So with that, are we ready?
So is it gonna be like very short
answers? Yeah, that's what flash Q&A is to wrap it all up with. Yeah, excellent. So the first question is, one value that the West could learn from the East?
Patience.
Thank you. Vice versa, one value that you think East could learn from the West?
Courage to challenge.
Thank you. A book or thinker who deeply shaped your view of communication?
Edward Hall, anthropologist, and I love his iceberg theory, and also inform us communication is part of culture. What we can observe on top of the iceberg is so important, but more importantly, what is underneath the water about core value. Core value and assumptions that we have.
Next one, which emotion do you think gets lost in translation most often?
That's a difficult one.
Take some time.
Maybe love, because there's so many shades to it. It depends on the context. It's a concept actually hard to translate.
Very profound answer. Thank you for sharing. Is hierarchy a strength or a barrier to communication?
Can be both.
Can be both indeed. Which takes longer to build, trust or understanding?
Oh, wow. I would say it depends. Trust depends who you're dealing with. Understanding depends on the subject matter.
And to you now, who is an excellent, I used the word excellent communicator and linguist at the very beginning of our interview, what it is to you now?
I would say understanding.
Thank you. And the final one, what's harder to translate, humor or honesty?
Definitely humor. That's an easy one to say.
Thank you so much. I feel that, as I was saying initially, this topic deserves so much attention. And the fact that, it requires the profound understanding of the context, but not just the context, but the emotion that we translate. I believe that we need more and more this element of digging into it and actually trying to learn more about it so that we can then transfuse and get it along with, ourselves, but also the younger generations that are coming up. So thank you for the gift of content, for being here today.
Thank you so
Catherine.
much for having me. And thank you for all the wonderful questions. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much.